Hello, wonderful people. Thank you for your patience about how to forgive yourself after a toxic relationship. I just got off a plane. I am back in Dallas, which it's like my husband and I were talking. I think this is my fifth trip to Dallas this year, and there'll be like 7 or 8 next year. So, and he works in Dallas, so we're in Dallas a lot. Hey, Heather. But how to forgive yourself after a toxic relationship. And as many of you know, I was in France recently. My husband and I went to Paris, and I don't speak French. I took 2 years of French in high school. I do not speak French, okay? And we actually got stuck in the elevator. And in the middle of Paris with a bunch of people who did speak French. And obviously the firefighters spoke French, and the people, when we pushed the little button to ask for help, spoke French, and we couldn't call 911, and they would have spoken French, okay? And I could only speak from my own perspective. I could only see from my own perspective, okay? But that's not something you should. I don't want to start blaming myself for not speaking French. I didn't know I was going to get trapped on an elevator. I should have brushed up on my French, okay? But I didn't, okay? And I know that's a silly example, but when you were talking about a toxic relationship, you only see from your own perspective. And if you are good, kind, loving, and giving and forgiving, you expected the person you were in the relationship with, whether it be the parent or partner, you expected them to treat you the way you would be treated. At the Power of Self conference I've been doing recently, we've had a lot of controversy over the golden rule, and we were kind of making our group rules and thought the golden rule is appropriate. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Okay, but that's crazy dangerous when it comes to a toxic person, because they live by a different set of rules that you don't live by. A set of rules that you didn't understand. Just like when I was in France and I was stuck in that elevator and I didn't understand the language. I didn't understand what was happening. When you're in the middle of a toxic relationship, you feel like there's a different language being spoken. You don't understand what's happening. You're like, why do they think I said that? Why would they think that? Because you are seeing from your own perspective, and they are seeing from their own perspective, and it's like they're speaking a different language, a language that is filled with manipulation, a language that is filled with power dynamics, a language that is filled with different sets of rules. And if you've not read my article on different sets, how a toxic relationship is a different set of rules, it's very useful. I can post that in these comments, and then there's an article I wrote for Better After 50 about forgiving yourself after a toxic relationship. You didn't know because you weren't toxic, okay? If you are a toxic person, toxic people are actually very good at picking out other toxic people because they know what the games are, okay? You didn't know what the games are because you aren't toxic. That is one of the best ways that I've forgiven myself, that I found helped other people forgive themselves. Because if I had been more toxic and I had been more manipulative, and and the toxic people, they say, well, you're the narcissist, you're manipulative, you're this, you're that, okay? Yes, if I had actually been those things, I would have been able to pick up on what was happening. But because I wasn't those things, I was just thought my love was enough, and I was just going to be forgiving and just be a good person and just do the right thing and just work on my communication issues and just do the things I could control and just keep trying and just keep hoping. All those things were blown up in my face. Okay? And my guess is they have blown up in your face, even with a parent. God, it's my mother. I don't want to give up on her. Oh my gosh, it's my child. I don't want to give up on them, despite the evidence before you that says you're obviously speaking 2 different languages. They're speaking a language of control, and you're trying to speak a language of connection. Okay, so that is a awesome way to forgive yourself. Oh, bonjour. Yeah, I actually did brush up on my French, Elizabeth, which I should have done a lot more. But life's full of shouldas and couldas. But as far as the side of the toxic relationship, oh my gosh, it was me being a good person that was the reason I didn't see that. Now, I've since learned to be sweet, and savvy, right? And that's how those of you going into life, going into business, going into dating, going into friendship, going into whatever, you don't want to just be kind, because only being kind can get you in real trouble. You don't want to just be savvy, because you want to still be hopeful and optimistic and full of love and see the best in people, right? You still want to be those things too. But it's kind of like, I had a Bojangles biscuit this morning in the airport, which is very spicy, and my husband was enjoying it, and it was spicy, and I wanted to put some honey on mine, so it cut down on the spice. But it was sweet and spicy, right? I know that's a funny example. But in your life, you want to have a little spice, right? But definitely keep that sweetness, but just have a different skill set to recognize. It would have been extremely useful when I was in that elevator to know French, right? I had to keep depending on the people around me to help me through what was happening. We're stuck on there for like an hour. It was not fun. I had to, depend on those other people because I didn't have the knowledge of the language. And you want to develop the knowledge of the language of toxic people so that you can recognize it immediately, so that you can understand what's happening, and so you can say, oh, I'm not going to go there again. And I was out for dinner last night with a friend's birthday, and they talked about, this person was asking about what I do and that sort of thing. And she said, how do you know? Like, how your toxic person meter, how do you know? And my friends were telling stories about my toxic person meter, and how somebody will tell me a story and I'll say, oh my gosh, that person's toxic, you need to stay away from them, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, what? That was a 2-minute conversation about how great that guy is. I said, that guy is not great, he's toxic, you need to stay away from him. Then most of the time people don't listen. These are not clients or anything. These are just like random people in my life, and the person doesn't listen. And then a year later they come back and they're like, oh my gosh, you're exactly right, how did you know that? And it's seeing patterns, right? Picking up on patterns. One of the patterns is, that's weird. If something triggers in my head and I say, that's weird, okay? Before, in my former life, and what this person is doing, you talk yourself out of it. Gosh, Sarah, why are you being judgmental? They just had a bad day. There's probably nothing wrong. You shouldn't be, you shouldn't think bad things about people. You should give them a chance. You shouldn't be judgmental. You should be, whatever. You turn it back on yourself. Okay? And so now when I hear the phrase, that's weird, I'll turn it back on myself. I think that is a danger signal, and then I look for other danger signals. And I was telling her, I don't want to give 3 or 4 years of my life trying to figure out why it was weird, because at that point you're already sucked in. You may have a kid with that person, you may be in a business deal with that person, you may have entrenched your life with that person. And so for me, the that's weird is one of the early signals long enough. But as far as going back and forgiving yourself, how would you know that? The years of research I've put into the subject, and the conversations I've had, and the amount of time and energy I've spent studying it to figure out those patterns, I didn't know those things. I did not know those things before. I did not know. I thought being a good person and doing the right thing was enough. And being a good person and doing the right thing is still the way to go. It's still the rules I live by in my own life. But what the right thing looks like looks a little different now. It means being smart. It means trusting my intuition. It means picking up on things, be able to pick up on things for myself and others. And it means being brave enough to trust that piece of myself, so that I don't end up in a long spiral hole of more pain and confusion, and allowing toxic people in my life. So hope that helps, and I'll check you guys out tomorrow for our next conversation, our next live. See ya!